welcome to Talking Down the Highway, a Beach Boys podcast presented by Strange Currencies Music. I'm Matt.
I'm Glenn.
I'm Tim.
Fort George. Don't forget, Glenn. Fort George.
Costanza. Never forget.
I was supposed to remember that's what I'm drinking.
It's the summer of George.
It's the summer of George. Fort George, Washington. George Washington. I'm drinking Fort George.
Fort George.
Electric surfboard.
Correct, yeah. What do you think of it?
It's good.
It's really good,
Yeah,
right?
it's tasty.
Easy drinking. Indeed.
Oh, yeah.
And topical.
It is glorious.
Relevant. Surfboard.
Surfboard. It's electric. Oh, there's lots of electric.
The electric slide.
Electric pianos.
By the way,
I'm turning Glenn's microphone down a little bit because he's very loud.
Sorry.
I just want to point out, too, that little theme song we just heard. You know what would make surf rock really, like, a lot better? Some singing. You know?
Interesting.
Some singing.
I was just triggered by Bowie's barking because
Well, see, that was the earliest form of surf rock singing was dogs.
was dogs barking.
Yeah.
I cannot
Everybody knows
approach Bowie without him freaking losing his
Today?
mind.
Yeah.
Most days, I even came without my usual Dodger hat. I usually wear a Dodger
He
hat.
definitely doesn't like that.
So
He's not an idiot.
Yeah.
Hey,
I'm starting to doubt whether, to doubt the fact that you're not a Terminator. Because dogs don't like Terminators.
dogs don't like robots. That's
Yeah.
right.
Established fact.
Or pod people, so I
Or
don't really
pod.
know.
Okay.
I'm going to have to
I'll have
do a
to prove
Turing
my
test later.
Yeah. Something.
Anyway, Fort George Electric
Fort
Surfboard.
George electric surfboard.
Tim, you've got
delicious.
what now?
It's the good old standby Freem IPA, I believe.
Yeah, we really shouldn't be talking about them anymore
Yeah.
after that debacle with the last show.
I think it's pronounced Puff.
Puffrime.
Puff the
Freem.
Magic
Yeah.
Friam.
I'm also drinking a Freem. I have the South Pacific IPA.
Ooh.
And you know what? Fuck you, Freem, but it's still pretty good beer.
I think you mean fuck you.
Fuck you. Yeah. Come on, Freem. Should we give him another chance?
I don't know.
For those not
Like
in the know,
I could
we
tag
have
them in the.
we have lots of beef on this podcast. We have a beef
Lots
with
of it.
Pafreem because they refuse to show up and sponsor us, even though we gave them countless.
We should get a sponsorship
tips.
from Les Schwab because sometimes they give out free beef,
Oh,
actual beef.
they actually give beef. The tire store.
Yeah.
Les Schwab. What?
The hell are you talking?
You guys don't know. You're not locals.
What's happening?
Les Schwab, the founder or whatever, was a rancher.
Huh.
And he just
And-
gives out beef.
Yeah, I don't know if they still do it, but there always was an ad campaign where he's like, free beef time. Like, come in and buy tires and get free beef. And you get a selection of like frozen cuts you could take home.
Ran over by our tires. Interesting.
Anyway,
I just know they sponsor basketball tournaments.
yeah, they do a lot.
Wow. Okay. Les Schwab.
Or as the
Northwest.
French say, Les Schwab.
Les Schwab.
Yes. I have some exciting news for you guys.
what?
Actually, yeah.
Okay.
I'm
Tire related?
no, nothing to do with tires.
No beef related.
Did you both know that the Earth's population has recently surpassed 8 billion?
Duh. I mean, no, I didn't know that actually.
The most recent number that I could find was 8.019 billion people.
So,
Wow.
Oh, okay. So I see where you're going.
Yeah. We have hit 8.583 billion listens.
So,
Which means you did the math here, right?
I mean, we must have some listeners on other planets.
Well, either that or just the average person has listened to our podcast
Multiple times.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying we have a listen for more than every person on this planet.
Huh. I mean,
Yeah.
there's all the
way to go us.
there's all the chuds in the Hollow Earth they're probably listening to. You know.
I was
Just
thinking of
hate
the
rage
different
listening.
chuds.
Oh, sorry. No.
The other chuds, I think they tuned us out
talking
after
about the
episode
cannibalistic underground or humanoid
humanoid
underground
underground dwellers.
dwellers. Yeah,
Yeah.
They might be rage listening
not the
just
MAGA
to find out
chuds.
where we are,
that's true.
just so they can.
Yeah. All right. So anyway, yeah.
Solid.
And that's just actually by our big three, which is YouTube, and Spotify, and Apple Music. I had never even looked into the Apple Music stuff until like a couple weeks ago. That's actually where we have the most listens.
Yeah, I'm telling you, Apple Music is
Like
underrated.
half of those are from Apple Music. It's like, oh
underrated.
wow, I had no idea that that many people are listening to us, and now I'm like a little nervous.
What about our subscription 8-track club that when we send out the tapes to people?
We got a few of those.
Okay.
Yeah, it hasn't caught on as much as other things that we've
bad.
done, but yeah. All right. Any
So-
other funny anecdotes before we move on to this
antic-
week's topic?
Antidotes.
Antidotes.
I drank some poison. Then I took an antidote.
Oh, good.
Nice.
All right.
Excellent.
And you're here.
Excellent.
It's just, to see what would happen.
Right.
It's fun.
It's good. You made it. You made it. You waited. I'm glad you pulled through.
All right. Well, hey, let's take a break, and we're going to come back and share what it is that we're talking about this week.
I guess.
All right, and we are back on Talking Down the Highway. And this week, we are talking about the next album. Wait, no. What? Sidestepping here.
Sidestep. Little.
Our little Beach
Bob
Boys
and weave.
have become apparently big time since we started this podcast.
What?
To the point of where Disney,
What?
this startup, this new company,
Walt
decided
Disney?
that they were going to do a documentary on our boys,
A movie?
on our friendly neighborhood boys.
You're talking about Walt Disney or Roy Disney?
Yes.
Okay, that's cool.
I was trying to think of something clever
It's
to
a
say about
collab.
Disney's head being frozen, but yeah.
Wow.
Nothing.
Well, good for those guys.
Proven that when you go woke, you go broke. Yeah.
Is there really enough, to document about our boys?
Certainly.
That we haven't already, right? I mean,
they're just boys. They're just some nice boys from the neighborhood.
actually, but they don't stay boys.
Really?
Yeah, my favorite moment in the entire documentary. We'll get there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I imagine we all have the same favorite moment. But we'll get there. We'll get there.
But it's called The Beach Boys. The
yeah,
doc.
that's going to be tricky
on-
for our
it is.
for our title of this.
I think we should. I submit
because there's also an album coming up called The Beach Boys, which
a subtitle for this one.
Oh.
In parentheses, for beginners.
for beginners.
The Beach Boys for beginners.
Okay.
Okay.
Or for dummies.
Yeah. Yeah, remember when those dummies books were really popular?
Yeah.
Or like an idiot's guide to. Yeah.
I think beginners is the more polite way to put it because it's pretty surface level. And we're not talking about our opinions on it probably yet, but
No, we're not.
It's
We're
the
just talking about the fact that it exists.
it's on Disney Plus. You can
It's
watch
the
it.
definitive look at America's band.
Definitive.
That's what the poster says.
I believe that this podcast is the definitive look
Right?
at America's band. Yeah.
This documentary is less than 2 hours.
So
Yeah.
wait, okay, so
that's disappointing.
Does it have a name?
Let's start off just
it's
strong.
just called the Beach Boys.
Beach
Have you
Boys.
not been paying attention?
No,
Glenn?
I know, but
Glenn's
I'm
over
just
there in his own
saying-
fucking little world.
I was
not even involved in the conversation.
I'm just saying Disney Plus, they are now starting to build a collection. You know you've made it when Disney covers you? I don't know.
Yeah, but they spent all their money on drone shots, so they didn't have any money left over for a title beyond just the Beach Boys. Way to go, Disney Plus.
As opposed to the Beatles, they get back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the running time, the Beatles documentary Get Back on Disney Plus, it was 4 parts, total of like almost 8 hours, I think.
At least, yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it was closer to 10, but
I think it's like 8, but
okay. So it wasn't quite Ken Burns.
I'm glad they saved us from that because
No.
I'm saying,
Well,
I'm
Structurally,
saying, like,
there's a big problem with this. I feel like trying to tell the Beach Boys story in 2 hours
Yeah.
is just woefully inadequate.
Right.
And I know you're going to say that you have your reasons why we didn't need more of this particular production.
There. Thank
But I
you.
also do believe that some of my issues with this particular production
sure.
comes from the fact that it's just simply not long enough.
Yeah.
And just structurally, if we're going to just talk structurally right now, I feel like why not make it like a docu-series? Like this could have been a 4-parter. They could have stretched it out to 6 or 7, hours, and I think people would have been into like learning the real story about this band. Like
Right.
tell me that this is not going to get an audience if you're diving into the drama of
maybe. I think that I don't know how, popular as far as streams go the Beatles one was, but I think it was more of a hardcore fan thing.
It's pretty popular.
Yeah, I know, but do people really watch the whole thing? I don't know. This one, though, I feel like was clearly made for casual fans.
Yes, that's it. And here's the other thing.
I wish it wasn't. I wish it was more in depth, but that would have been more of a niche thing.
The Beatles one, it felt like it revolved around a lot of this footage that hasn't been widely available.
Right.
Sure.
And so there was a lot of material.
Yeah.
There's nothing new in this. They advertise that, like, there's conversations with Mike Love and Janelle Monáe and but like even the Don Was stuff is even stuff that we've seen before. Well, maybe there's some in there, but like it's just retread stuff. So
sometimes we act a little arrogant on this show, but
just a little.
But the reality of it is that we don't really like put ourselves out there as like know-it-alls on the Beach Boys.
Aren't.
Those people are out there.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
And some of them, I think, have an issue with our podcast. We've gotten into a little bit of some arguments, I think, here with some of those folks. But we don't put ourselves out there as the final authority really on the Beach Boys. But still, I learned zero things in watching this.
Yeah.
Right.
And I am somebody that could learn more detail probably, even though I've now we've recorded something 40 hours of this show.
Right. And we've been doing a lot of research and stuff.
So. We have read Wikipedia. We've spent we've logged in a lot of time.
Like we're 30 pages of an actual book.
We're trying to be Beach Boys nerds. Like
I don't know.
We're like mid-level.
Like if you are super, super obsessed with bands, sometimes like again, some of the people who like we have engaged in comments with,
sure,
these are people who I think sometimes are like, the Beach Boys are like literally all I listen to.
Yeah,
and I don't want to be that.
They follow the band, and there's nothing wrong with that. And they're in all the message boards, combing all of the details. That's not us. We're not trying to say that we are the definitive.
No. I mean, because we're not going to tell you what length of cable they use to record the, bassoon part on the outtake. Yeah, like that's not what we're doing. But there are people who can tell you that. Now, is that what I wanted to get out of this documentary? No, but like if there was some sort of new anecdotes out there that again we hadn't heard before, some kind of interesting new insight. But it is, as Tim put it, this is very much for beginners.
Yeah.
For people who have Disney Plus and are like, oh,
yeah,
Beach Boys.
But still, even then, I don't know that my wife or daughter who watched it with me, I don't know that they learned a damn thing by watching it either. And again, I mean, sure, they've listened to our podcast and they...
Have they really?
Picked up some
My
stuff.
family has not listened to this podcast, but that's all right.
My dad listens to it.
He does, and he comments on our YouTube.
That's right.
Yeah, although he hasn't in
a while.
Hi, Tim's dad.
Yeah.
Maybe he stopped listening. I don't know.
With those 8 billion others he's lost.
Now that it's so popular, it's like it's not cool anymore.
Not cool anymore.
I liked their early stuff more.
Right.
But there's the Beach Boys were together and apart. They've just all been, 3 of them at least have been alive for so long that there's so many little story, like sub narratives within the larger narrative to be talked about that, like you said, it could be a docuseries. There could be one, just about up till David Marks leaves or whatever. And then
the early years, right?
Yeah.
There could be just like the Manson saga.
Yeah, exactly. Or
there
just
could be
any kind of squabbling or whatever.
Interstitial
squabbling.
Yeah.
Maybe we should produce.
Stuff. Yeah.
Maybe we should produce a docuseries. We could write it up. We could script it. We could.
We couldn't get any of the footage.
We could get Stamos to help us produce it.
So here's the thing. This thing
hostage.
This thing kind of reeks of Stamos.
It does.
I was hoping for
reeks of Mike.
I was hoping against. Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah. I was hoping against hope that we get this sort of warts and all kind of thing, but it is very, very, very sanitized.
Oh yeah,
and
Mike washed.
And Mike washed, absolutely. Yeah. We'll get into some more specifics about that, of course. But I just feel like, again, structurally, we were never going to get what we wanted, what we wanted from this.
Right.
The thing is, I don't know that means that anybody will ever get what we want in terms of like a really, truly fascinating visual look into. I mean, obviously, this podcast is pretty fucking great. but I don't know. Like, they never talked about the Landy stuff at all.
Not at all.
I mean, and that would be fascinating, I think, to like the general public. They never talk about the interstitial squabbles at all. that would be fascinating to the general public. They didn't talk about Dennis's death at all.
Yeah.
Like, that would be fascinating
Or Carl's death, really, right?
Yeah, and
They
Carl's
just
is a little
mention
bit
him in,
more,
like,
quote unquote standard.
Right,
Dies of
yeah.
lung cancer, right? Maybe not lung cancer.
I think it was.
Yeah. But yeah, there was none of that intrigue. Even the Murray stuff was
They
just
touched
kind of
a
like
little bit on the Murray.
Yeah. And even Brian's mental illness was like really kind of just sort of
Yeah.
And again, this thing got the official stamp of approval
Because
from
it
the
was
Living
so-
Beach Boys, and so
because
their
it was so
lawyers are
sanitized,
there
right.
saying, we need our if this is going to happen, if this is going to get the endorsement of the boys, then it needs to present them in this clean, sanitized way. And it only just had these vaguest of allusions to all of the stuff that just on a personal level makes them so fucking fascinating.
I mean, I almost feel like maybe this is also one of those things where it's like, let's put something nice and congratulatory together for Brian to watch before he goes.
Maybe. And maybe that's what this is ultimately, is it's a
Yeah.
little bit of a victory lap in the public consciousness. And not only for Brian, but just for the guys. I mean, they're all up there in years. We've remarked on recent shows that Brian, who has been more out in the public eye because of this documentary, he is not looking well. Mike's not looking well. He's sounding rough. Al's still doing fine, and Bruce is whatever.
Yeah.
But Mike and Brian, I mean, nowhere near Mike as much as Brian, but
Right.
Mike's looking and sounding pretty rough and aged in this. I felt.
Yeah.
I don't know.
He
Maybe
does,
I'm just becoming soft.
and I can't tell. Like, there's a couple moments in the movie where like you feel like you get some regret coming from Mike, and I don't know if that's genuine or not. But if it is, maybe he is kind of getting to that age where he's just like, time's running out.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But they are offset by the moments of, this is why I don't like this guy.
Right.
And
I
we got
still
plenty that we
saw
can
that in there, yeah.
dive into for sure. But yeah.
So contextually, this does try and paint a wide swath. It touches on the early years. It goes all the way through kind of the touring Beach Boys, Pet Sounds, post Pet Sounds,
The resurgence,
resurgence of the Endless Summer.
Yeah, but then so nothing from the 80s is mentioned. They didn't even mention Kokomo.
Right.
Like,
Right, it was
played over the end credits,
yeah,
right?
that's right.
But like, even that stuff wasn't like, and I would have thought, all right, well, this is a Mike Love thing. Like, he's going to have this
He
his
even
own
knows,
victory
even
lap.
he
of,
knows.
They didn't even
this
show
isn't-
any clips from Baywatch or anything.
No, or Full House.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
I want to know what Joey thought of Kokomo. Cut it out.
I was glad that they talked a little bit about the Blondie and Ricky era, and it was actually really cool to see some of that concert footage. I'd never seen that before, like Blondie singing and then playing live.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Would that be your favorite new thing that you saw?
yeah,
Because my favorite was actually seeing them perform "Please Let Me Wonder." I thought that was kind of cool.
Oh,
just because, I can get into the specific cut, but like that was my favorite. Oh, cool! They're like actually performing "Please Let Me Wonder." Pretty quickly, it cuts to the studio version's audio.
okay.
But
What was the live performance? Where were they performing?
so, well, okay, this is one of the things,
TV?
I guess, and I'll just one of the, I don't remember which show it was from, but it was right after the footage where they were playing Long Tall Texan, and they were talking about Mike being this front man, and how he just became to embody the rock front man, and they're showing just the ridiculous, I'm a long, tall Texan, and then as soon as the song was over, there's like this short, quick cut, and then they go right into Please Let Me Wonder, and that moment right there just is like this total contrast. Here's Mike and his artistry, and Brian and his artistry, and it was just kind of like this. I don't know,
But it was a different performance.
no, it was the same
stage?
same show.
Really?
Like one song ends and they go
Interesting.
right into the other, unless there was some really clever editing that happened there. And I don't know. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is interesting because I wonder if that might be on release because there's that concert for TV that's on YouTube.
It's not. Yeah,
It's not that
the
one?
Lost Concert. It's not the Tammy Show.
Okay. Because they do the Long Tall Texan for during the Lost concert too. But
Okay.
it must have been a different performance.
Yeah, I felt like there was a lot of moments in here where I felt like it was Mike trying to justify his input into the the narrative that the it felt like I was hearing a lot of Mike was a necessary evil kind of thing. Like, yeah, I had to do the hard work. Somebody had to like push us and get us in, and I felt like that was a little heavy-handed in this one.
Maybe, but you know what? We've even given a little bit of credit to Mike on that. Like, talked about how his ambition in the early days was actually really, really important. Yeah. Brian had all the talent, but Mike had this drive in terms of having that ambition to get him out there and to push in a way that Brian didn't. Brian brought the goods artistically. And look, I think there's no love lost between Mr. Kibbles and Bits and the show, but he did bring some important stuff to the group.
Talk about that in the doc very much. I feel like Murray gets more credit in the doc.
They definitely did give Murray a lot of credit for being that forceful push.
I don't know. I felt like there was a lot of Mike like defense talking about like how he got stiffed of royalties and how like he was telling this. He kind of crafted the story about how Murray kind of maybe stiffed him a little bit, but like, you know, Murray was trying to do what he was trying to do, and poor Mike had no choice in the matter.
Oh, but to do a lawsuit.
And so he kind of explained that away.
So you talk about a lot of mentions, actually. Did anybody count how many times Mike specifically mentioned co-writing Beach Boys songs in the documentary?
Oh,
I didn't keep a tally.
So I watched it a second time.
Oh, good for you.
And part
Doing
of it was
the Lord's work.
Part of it was to take some notes. The first time I watched it was mostly just I wanted to take it in, right?
Yeah.
And then the second time was like, I need some notes for the show, and why not while we're here?
Okay.
13 separate times in the span of less than 2 hours, in which Mike very clearly, specifically mentions that he co-wrote songs with Brian.
And the way he presents it, I noticed. I did a quick like skip through and took a little notes, but for kind of a second viewing, he presents it as like. At some point, Brian is being called a genius, and there was so much pressure on Brian,
right?
But not enough pressure or not enough credit given to the other guys. And you know, I co-wrote a lot of those songs, and maybe if I had gotten credit, maybe that would have taken some pressure off of Brian. He's like very carefully wording it and trying to make it like, oh no, but you know, it would have been helpful.
My note here is, oh, how magnanimous, Mike. It might have been easier for Brian to handle the genius label, as he puts it, if you got more credit.
It's totally like Mike, like filtering his words, knowing that Brian's going to watch this. This is his chance to make amends because he feels like a douche.
And I do think, though, the way the movie handles that moment when he talks about the lawsuit, and like this is one of those times where it sounds like he's got regret. And so, you know, he's presenting it in his interview as like, oh, you know, I had no choice, and you know, it was hard to do. But then the movie doesn't treat it like. The movie still makes it seem like that was the fracturing point, like that really ruined all the relationships and like kind of killed their. Well, I mean, obviously it happened before then, but I thought it actually made it seem like that was a real bad thing that really made the whole relationship toxic between him and Brian. So I don't know. I could be misremembering. I didn't watch that in the rewatch, but yeah, that's what I remember.
Well, we have no structure for this, really. We're just kind of freestyling here. But let's take a quick break, and let's come back, and let's try to focus on some positives, maybe. Some things that we can take away from this that we have in our notes where we're like, all right, this is something that I enjoyed.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, we'll be right back then.
All right, we are back on this lovely sunny summer day. Maybe that's why we're trying to look at the positives.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why we're a little bit more chipper.
We're keeping the summer alive.
We're keeping the summer alive.
Yeah.
That's right.
Positives.
We're talking about the Beach Boys documentary on Disney Plus.
Hey, wait a minute. Sounds like it's time for an episode of Sound of Vision.
Really?
Yeah, that's right. It's time for Sound of Vision, where we discuss all things aesthetic using the scale provided to us by David Bowie. Glenn, if we really like something, we call it a...
Low.
Low is right. David Bowie's masterpiece. Tim, if we don't like something, we call it a...
Never let me down.
Never let me down, in which David Bowie definitely let us down.
Motherfucker.
David. And if it's in the middle, it's kind of a middle ground. Let's dance.
Yeah.
David Bowie's okayest album. All right, things that we liked about it, and I wanted to go into Sound of Vision because visually, this is a really well done documentary. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I like the sort of animations they did with the album covers and stuff. It was pretty good, I guess. I don't know.
Just on a visual level.
Right.
It's
didn't
got
go too far as like some documentaries you watch them and they're just so flashy with the animation and the editing, it's like distracting, and this didn't go that far. So yeah.
I mean, I'm just looking at the poster. I'm looking at the poster from Disney Plus, and it's got this kind of like nice sepia toned, kind of a tame, tan, sandy. It's got like kind of a pseudo drawings of the boys, and it's got that iconic, surfboard on the front, surfing safari.
I thought the titles, the font titles looked nice. And,
and again, it's Disney, so like
money went into this.
Money went into it. They made it. They didn't want to embarrass themselves. They wanted this to be polished, and it's polished. Yeah.
The archival footage is nicely restored for the most part.
Yes, some of it, I don't remember which clips specifically, but I do remember thinking some clips didn't look very good, but they probably just didn't have like a good source for them. I don't know if that means they're just like fully digital or what, but some of it looked pretty grainy. Nothing looked like they found the old film and like scanned the film or anything necessarily. Maybe some of it did.
Well, so just in terms of some visual things that I picked up on that I liked, in terms of a couple of the just still photographs, the picture of the Love Mansion was really kind of revealing, I thought, right? Showing the contrast
And
between
the
growing up that of the boys in their modest tract home,
and then the interior, like Mike says, we had an organ, a grand piano, and a harp, and then there you see them, and you're like, Jesus.
So I thought that was kind of like an interesting thing that visually helped. The picture of Brian in a fur coat playing the bass is my favorite image of Brian Wilson. Period. It's great. I love it.
I don't remember it in the movie, but I think I've seen that picture. Yeah,
we need to do something with that on the Talkin' Beach Boys Instagram. It's a great picture. He's wearing a fur coat.
We should just all get fur coats.
The fucking boss.
Yeah.
So I thought that was great. Let's see if I've got anything else in my notes that are about visual. Oh, here's a visual one. David Marks looks a whole lot like Jon Stewart, right?
Oh yeah, he does.
Right? Like totally looks like Jon Stewart. Thought I would just share that visually.
That's funny. I didn't think about that until now.
One thing I didn't like visually, Mike's stupid fucking hat.
Be a light?
Be a light.
Yeah.
Yeah. Be a light, my ass, Trumper. Fuck you, Mike. Let's see here. Oh, Mike's sparkly outfit in the the beginning scene.
Yeah.
Right at the beginning it's something.
Yeah.
It's something.
I feel like I've seen a lot of images of that, and it's that Anaheim show, I think.
From '76, I want to say. Let's see.
Oh, I liked that. There's early in the doc. There's you see a wall just full of like covers of like singles, like album sleeves or whatever, single sleeves. And Getting Hungry was on there, and I appreciated that.
Nice.
Yeah.
One thing I wasn't sure about, there were a lot of shots of them in the studio, obviously, including shots where they are literally shirtless in the studio, which, okay, that's weird. Let's see, what else do I have here visually? Let's see. I think that might be the end of my visual notes on it. But let's see here. Oh, blonde Oklahoma guy that they kept interviewing has a Mellotron, so I thought that was kind of cool at least. So that was a thing. Visually, I guess no mention of Murray's glass eye was kind of disappointing.
Yeah.
Always like a good Murray glass eye story, but we didn't get any. Another visual thing. When they're introducing all of them, and talked about the titles already, and it's Brian, the oldest brother, Dennis, the middle brother, Mike Love, the cousin. Al was the good friend. Yeah. And David was just like neighborhood kid, not the good friend. Just I forget what his was. It was
I don't remember.
It's like neighbor or something like.
Yeah, I think it was just neighbor.
Yeah. Anyway, visually, how would we rate it?
Okay, I mean, Let's Dance. Okay, so here's the deal. It's I like that Disney cleaned something up so that it's like well done, but it's still kind of sterile.
Yeah,
I
can see
mean,
that.
it's just, I wish that there was something a little bit more artistic done with it, like some sort of visionary, spin on it that gave it an artistic look or something that, kind of did something with that footage that made it fresh or new. But it just felt like a really well done YouTube documentary.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like just repurposing stuff that was already there. I wish they had done something with technology or with an artistic take on it. I mean,
Maybe, but those things can get dated really quickly.
yeah. I mean, just for example, like the new Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, they like took this whole like cartoon comic book vibe and did it so it literally feels and looks like a comic. I wish they had done something that was meaningful, that had some sort of a visual something to it. Again, it just felt like a really well-produced YouTube documentary.
My thing with documentaries in general is I don't like too much visual, but
it's
dressing
again. But it's the subtle stuff. Like, I mean, the whole Ken Burns effect. Like,
I was just going to mention Ken Burns. So
like that's something that Ken Burns brings. Is he brings it to life in a new way.
But a Ken Burns doc will have like a photograph, and the camera's kind of panning and then zooming, and then the narration is going, and like, as the narration goes along, the image can take on a new meaning.
Exactly.
Just very subtle stuff.
Yes.
Like one of my favorite documentaries ever is The Thin Blue Line. It's an Errol Morris movie, and it's just very straightforward interviews. There's some recreations, but it's just very straightforward and skillfully put together. This one I felt like not just the visuals, but the audio too. Everything was just so chopped up. Like it was so edited. Obviously, things have to be edited, but like, I don't know. It just felt like it was being presented, or it wasn't put together well in the sense of like scripting, because you do script a documentary as far as like where things go, how to plot it out. It was more like, let's cut everything in such a way that it is flashy and attention grabbing. And it was just built based on that, like with aesthetic in mind than the storytelling. I think. But like I said, not as bad as some docs get.
Sure.
But yeah, so I'll give it a Let's Dance. I won't go Never Let Me Down, but I'll give it a Let's Dance.
I think Let's Dance is
Let's Dance
totally
is where I
appropriate.
am.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, good episode.
Yeah.
All right. So, okay.
Let's dance. So, okay. Now, here's the other thing. Because Disney could, they got as much as they could. We got interviews with all the guys, right? A little bit of new stuff with Brian.
So his one line is, I'm very proud of my brothers.
Right.
Yep. That was it. That was his one.
There may have been one sentence where he's off camera. Like there is a line leading up to that, but that's his on camera line.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
I just have here 2 contemporary sentences by Brian. I'm very proud of my brothers.
So we're left with new Mike Love stuff.
Lots of.
Lots of. Al Jardine stuff.
A lot of Al, a lot of Bruce.
A lot of Bruce.
David.
A lot of David Marks.
A little bit of Blondie.
A little bit of Blondie.
Tiny bit of Blondie. Some Marilyn.
Yes, Marilyn. So then
Marilyn at one point, I love this, used the word squabbling. She didn't say anything about interstitial, but squabbling was in there. So.
I like her point of view because, she's the one who had to put up with a bunch of bullshit. But she didn't sound bitter about it. She was very, she was like, oh, I got so sick of Be My Baby and, things like that. I like to see her side of it. And then there were a bunch of celebrity interviews.
Yeah, okay, so Don Was was in there, which I appreciate him. He's thoughtful.
Yeah, but they always drag him out for these kind of things.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, but he made a documentary about Brian. So
he's got a lot of insight. He does fine. Lindsey Buckingham is which they didn't.
He's the one that says, these guys are starting to do some really innovative stuff, but they're still wearing striped shirts. And that's like something that needs to be in a documentary about the Beach Boys. Because their whole thing about let's not do Monterey pop. Like people don't, we're still square, even if we're making, crazy inventive music.
So he
you know,
was
had
of the
that.
time. He was kind of the time.
Yeah.
Fleetwood Mac is, you know, indebted to a certain extent.
Mm-hmm.
Janelle Monáe was in there, which is interesting because
Yeah,
there's a little bit of street cred there for like contemporary artists who you know, have a lot of influence. You know, of course, she did a song with
right.
Ryan,
I was just gonna say.
Dirty Computer.
Janelle Monáe, her first album is fantastic.
Yeah.
I feel like each one has dropped off a little bit
Ooh,
since.
Be careful. Okay.
But she lost a lot of credibility with me when she literally said vinyls.
Yeah, I heard that.
come
I heard
on,
that, and I
Janelle.
knew you were
Come
going to bring it
on.
up. She said it. I knew you were going to bring that
Yeah,
up.
my
Maybe
grandma
that's-
had all these Beach Boys vinyls. No, they're not
one of those-
vinyls.
Maybe that's one of those words that's evolving.
No,
I think
no.
I feel like it's,
Yeah,
that
Matt
usage of it
needs
is
to-
becoming more common.
Yeah. So then, anyways, Ryan Tedder from One Republic.
I don't know.
Was that blonde Oklahoma boy?
Yeah. One Republic. Okay. Pop group. Yeah. Okay.
And there was another guy, the guy with glasses, who seemed had a lot to say more near the end. I don't remember. He was one of the guys though that was talking about the other guys in the Beach Boys not getting enough credit, but he was very passionate. I don't know who he was.
Yeah,
Some dude.
I said that the Talking Heads added nothing of value to this, really, for me. Nothing.
No, I mean a lot of it. I mean, literally, the celebrity ones. All they were there for was to share their experiences, like listening to the band when they were coming up, and so I guess you need some of that perspective to talk about the impact that the Beach Boys have had. But yeah, literally they didn't have any knowledge about the band necessarily. They were just sharing. They're like, oh yeah, I sure did like them. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I agree on that level.
And it was just a very MOR group of people. Like
MOR.
we had this 2 or 3 episodes ago, middle of the road. It was just like very. There was not really
today.
a whole lot of real like focus on the innovation, like on the lasting influence. There was nothing of value said about the Post Smile trilogy, which is so fucking influential to music right now.
Oh, you know what's weird about the
and
Post
very-
Smile trilogy? They had a song about what your favorite vegetable is.
Vegetable. Yeah, it's like this bewilderment.
I know it sounds crazy.
Yeah, well, there's like this bewilderment. It's some of their most like important and fascinating music, and that stuff is so fucking relevant in terms of like the whole bedroom indie pop thing, and like there's no mention of the contents of Sunflower other than Forever. That is a really, really influential record. Like there is so much like contemporary pop music that draws really, really heavily from that style. Like I'm not the biggest Lana Del Rey fan, but I think she could have actually, somebody like that could have brought some kind of perspective about the like musical, I don't know, just like that kind of vibe that is created in those late 60s, or really more like early 70s Beach Boys records. And where contemporaries, oh, okay, yeah, we'll believe what she says, kind of thing. Like again, I like Janelle Monáe, but I don't feel like her music has any real connection to the Beach Boys per se, other than the fact that she had Brian on one song, you know. Or but I don't know. I just felt like the choice of Talking Heads was pretty lackluster in that regard, because they just didn't add anything about what makes this band's music so fucking influential still to this day. And I know like getting Paul McCartney, you know, would have been a cool score, but they weren't going to do that. They didn't at least dust off, you know, Elton John once again for the billionth time to talk about Brian Wilson. And I wasn't expecting they're going to have like Animal Collective on there to talk about, you know, the influence of the Beach Boys or anything. But I don't know. I feel like they could have done better with the people that they chose to.
Yeah, I think they were
to
there.
represent the artistic side of what this band has done.
And at least a couple of them were just for like celebrity recognizability.
Right.
Yeah,
It's
Lindsey
Disney Plus
Buckingham,
again. This wasn't made for people who are hardcore. This was made for just, you know, beginners.
Well, I do like, so I guess we want the other Talking Heads are people who were actually in the band. Obviously, I was nice to see David Marks. I'm glad that they brought him along. It was interesting to hear what he had to say about Murray, because at one point he says that, I love Murray, but you know, I was an arrogant 15-year-old and we clashed. Yeah, which was I don't know. It sounded like, I don't know if maybe that's just, you know, the years go by and you realize like, you know, we were hung up on weird bullshit.
That was a moment more than probably anything else in the whole documentary. And I've got a note speaking to this of that was maybe just the most revealing quote of the whole thing for any of them, where he's saying, there's this one instance where I was pissed off about a thing and I backtalked or whatever. And I just, out of frustration said I quit. And he's like essentially saying like, I didn't mean it. It was just a thing that a dumb, arrogant 15-year-old says. And it just completely alters the entire course of his life. Like, I don't know that there was something kind of poignant about that. Like, I don't know.
Yeah,
because the way
it was
like
more...
contrasting how it's presented in the fucking made-for-TV movie.
Right.
Yeah.
I hate you, Murray. I don't want to carry my amp. It's too heavy.
So it does have a lot more weight, that quote from David in the doc, than when Al is talking about when he already left the band to go back to school. He comes back.
Which he doesn't say anything about the dental.
He doesn't say anything about dental school.
I think he went to MIU.
At one point, he did. At one point, he says, I had a folk group in high school, and I left the folk group to join the Beach Boys, and I feel a little bad about that. It's like, fuck you, Al. That was the best decision you ever made in your entire life.
I feel bad about that.
Yeah,
I was just turn my back on my folk group.
It's like the contrast to David's remark, where he left the Beach Boys.
Yeah.
But he had some interesting things to say. Al, his contribution is interesting because he's totally fine. He seems like a very, cogent guy, and, he seems fairly logical. Like, he doesn't have a lot of, I don't feel like he's got like a spin like Mike does necessarily, but then he does weird shit like, and who knows, he takes credit for the whole changing the name.
The Beach. Yeah.
But he doesn't even say the Beach. He says
just Beach.
Let's call ourselves Beach.
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't know, like in the biography that I sort of halfway read by
the Carlin
Peter
book.
Ames Carlin, called Catch a Wave, he, presumably spoke to the guy who told that story, which was like the guy who was working as the engineer in Brian's house. Says Brian came out with like legal documents saying like, guys, we're not boys anymore. We're men. Let's change your name to The Beach. I got it all right here. I just need your signatures. And they were like, yeah, we don't want to do that, Brian. Everyone knows the Beach Boys. And then Brian gets all sad and leaves the paperwork on the piano for like a week until that engineer like throws it away. Yeah. So that's like, I guess a primary source, but it's 2-3 times removed at this point. So,
but Al takes credit for it, and it's immediately after he does the stupidest thing ever.
Yeah, yes.
We were no longer Beach Boys.
We were beach men. And which I'm glad someone said it. Yeah. Because we've been saying that.
So fucking stupid.
Yeah. And like, I know Brian himself is an unreliable narrator, so if he had told the story about the beach, then maybe you'd be like, maybe it wasn't him, but this was from someone else. So yeah, I think Al is full of shit.
Totally full of shit. But hey, you know what? Let's take a quick break, and we'll come back for another segment here. But yeah, we'll take a break.
We're back. We're talking The Beach Boys, which is about the Beach Boys.
They're Beach.
Okay. Well, the documentary is called The Beach Boys. It's a documentary about beach.
About beach.
But
named by Al Jardine.
Well, we just talked about Al's dumb comments, and then earlier we talked about, like, I know it sounds crazy, there's a song about vegetables. That was another Al quote talking about Smiley Smile and just, it's so weird. Dumb. But that was also, when I talked about editing before, there was so much, like, fine slicing and dicing. That was an example of that, where he says, we had a song about vegetables, and then cuts really fast to like, I don't know, sounds crazy, and then cuts away. So like, I don't know if I can trust some of these interviews as far as like the full context of what they were saying. But then you got a guy like Mike who just says the stuff with with maybe an agenda.
Yeah.
And
well, speaking of Mike's agenda, so there's a quote in there where he's talking like, well, a lot of people have a favorite in the group, but they forget that it's a group. And
well, that's the thing.
Hold on. Favorite in the group? Sounds like it's time for an episode of Heroes and Villains. That's right. Heroes and Villains. We're discussing heroes and the villains, whatever it is we happen to be talking about this weekend. This week we're talking about the Beach Boys. Oh, yeah, that's the title.
Beach.
Yeah, okay. Mm-hmm. This documentary. Okay. Hero.
I mean,
Don was.
It's Brian.
It's Brian, of course. It's Brian.
I mean,
jeez.
See, here's the thing. There was a lot of talk in this documentary, like comparing, talking historically. It's like the Beatles and the Beach Boys, and they even made that like comment on that they were almost less like rivals and more like collaborators, and that they pushed each other on. And there was a lot of that, like, this is the original boy band, and as with all teeny bopper boy bands. Ooh, I'm a Ringo guy. I'm a Paul guy. Like, and it felt like Mike was trying to say, "Hey, we were like that too." I got my fans.
Yeah.
No, come on. The Beach Boys are Brian Wilson.
They absolutely are, and that whole just stupid narrative of Brian isn't the Beach Boys that they keep trying to push. He's not the only genius, or like it's just simply stupid.
Yeah. Right.
Brian is 98% of why anybody loves the Beach Boys.
Yep.
Whether they know it or not, he is why the Beach Boys are important.
Yes.
He is why they are relevant. He is why they were fucking good.
Right.
And without him, you have nothing.
And when they finally start talking about the post, Smile stuff, they don't give Carl enough credit.
Yeah.
Because, like, once those songs start coming up, and I actually really tuned in at that point in the movie, like, oh, man, this is a great era. And they talk about how, like, Brian was kind of not there anymore, so we had to do what we could and continue on. But, I mean, Carl was really the leader at that point.
Absolutely, yeah.
And,
Carl is a hero.
And Brian got him to that level, really.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. Brian, we've already established, is a 5-star. Carl, who is, by the way, still a good boy, 4.5. Okay.
Yeah.
Wait a second. I reject this hypothesis.
No, you
what?
Dennis is a 4.5.
Dennis is not a 4. We fucked that up so badly.
No, we didn't.
Speaking of Dennis, one of the things that was great, there were so many, like, Dennis loves to be in the water. Dennis loved the ocean. Like, all of these references throughout the whole thing.
Too soon.
Yeah. All right. So, hero, obviously Brian,
Yep.
with an honorable mention for Gacarl, because we love Gacarl too. Villain,
Murray's glass
it's
eye.
tough. No, it's that
Murray's
guy with the
glass
hat.
David Marks,
No, the other hat.
John Stewart.
Yeah, it's Mike.
It's Mike.
Yeah.
It's Mike.
Mr. Be a Fucking Light, Kibbles and Bits.
Mr. Teared Up, trying
Yeah. I hate that so
there's the
much.
whole section about pet sounds, and of course Mike makes it sound like, I never dislike pet sounds. I love that, blah blah blah. And even when they get into Smile, he's like, I sang on many of those songs.
I sang on many of those songs. Yeah,
But there's just no mention, of course, of Hang On to Your Ego.
No.
That whole situation,
No,
which is on Pet Sounds.
and he is so proud when he's talking about Pet Sounds. He's so proud of not only Pet Sounds, but specifically God Only Knows, which is like
God,
Paul McCartney
really?
said it was like the greatest song ever. Mike literally did nothing on
Right.
God. He is not even a backing vocalist on that song. He had zero to do with that song, and he's so fucking proud of it.
Yeah.
And he's proud of his time in the Beach Boys that he contributed virtually nothing to.
Yeah.
So fuck you, Mike Love. Oh, and also he further trashes another hero of ours, Van Dyke Parks.
Oh yeah, yeah, of course.
Just his stupid acid alliteration.
Right.
Like,
I mean, but I kind of appreciated that he didn't try to backpedal too much on that or sugarcoat it. He did sugarcoat it a little bit because he didn't come right out and say that little weird twerp. But he did the acid alliteration thing, talked about that.
yeah, and he did own up to I asked him to explain
Right.
what these songs meant.
But
why? Why does he need to explain what his songs mean to you?
I mean, the reason
Mike?
he brings that up is because he I'm sure he loves to tell that story because he loves to say that Van Dyke was like, I don't know. And then, because what Mike says, he tells the story. It's like, he says he didn't know. And I'm like, well, there you go. Or something like that. Yeah.
That is okay. We've talked here before about you don't need to know what specific lines in Surf's Up mean because the song itself just carries this weight. And fuck you, Mike. Yeah. Fuck you. I really, really wish. I guess we're done with here.
Yeah, solid episode.
As always. I wish there had been something contemporary with Van Dyke because it was all just this old 70s
or
era.
even like this doc takes a lot of interviews from other documentaries. They could have done that with Van Dyke too.
Oh, yeah.
He's been in plenty.
The Beautiful Dreamer.
Yeah.
He has a lot of really, really good insight into the band dynamic and into the whole Smile thing. But you know what? It doesn't paint Mike in a positive light. And so therefore it was off limits for this.
And what they did use was they used some of the footage of him outside Tower Records, which is in that was on the TV special that they did. But that was really weird because there was no natural sound. It looked like it was dubbed, but he was saying the same words. But they must have done some sort of AI to remove all of the street noise or whatever. I thought that was very strange. And then there's a moment where he's not on camera, but his voice is talking about drugs. And it sounds very manipulated. He says, those were the gays of considerable drug abuse. It sounded like that. That's when Brian's talking about doing all the speed and stuff, which I like that little anecdote. Like, oh boy, I just took the pill. But yeah, I think they did Van Dyke dirty. And I don't even know in what way. It just seems like, I don't know, his whole little section was just sort of suspicious somehow. Yeah. I do like one thing that Mike says in the doc, which is that he implies that the reason Surfin' took off was because they have a big family and they basically rigged it by calling into the radio station. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Sounds like something that Mike would encourage people to do.
Well, and again, that is that hustle.
That's true.
That's true. Right. And I also appreciate that's the other thing I appreciate about that this doc did is it kind of clarified this idea that there are two different Beach Boys. That there was Brian Wilson, there was that quote-unquote stay-at-home group that was doing the recording. And there wasn't any hiding, but it was clear that this was Brian's, Brian's thing, and that the touring group was something different. Yeah. And I think they made that, I think that was made pretty clear, that Mike was kind of in charge of the road. Or that's what it felt like. It was presented as that was Mike's contribution, that he kept them out going on the road while Brian
that was really Carl, music. But yeah,
right. Well, so that was the other piece that kind of meh. But if Mike wants to claim, like, hey, I sang on a lot of those songs, like that's what his contribution was, is that he took them touring and he kept the band going while Brian was making the music, while he was creating the art. I felt like that was kind of a, fair-ish presentation.
Yeah, I don't remember if it felt like he was necessarily emphasized as like the guy behind that, but I did think it was interesting when they talked about like just like as far as factual biographical stuff, like the Glenn Campbell anecdote and Bruce talking about when he first joined the group. Like Glenn Campbell was at that point just a session guy,
right?
And they brought him to play with them on the road a little bit, and then he got mobbed at some point by. Right. He described it as a bunch of teenage girls. They ripped off his shirt and took some clumps of hair.
Yeah, right.
And he said from then on he was the first guy in the car. He didn't want any of that shit. And this was before he was like famous as Glenn Campbell. And then the Bruce anecdote was when he says they brought him on like really short notice. He was like learning the bass, so he just specifically. So he was like just a keyboard player, and then his comment about like not even knowing how much to get paid. He just wanted to make $250 a week.
Right.
And so he ended up going out for a couple weeks with them, and Carl's like, "How much money you want?" He said $250, and he must have thought I meant $250 a night because he gave me $3,000, and I was in the band. I thought Bruce's contributions were kind of fun. I don't know, like he's at this point, I feel like he's pretty neutral. I don't know. I've got issues with him in, his involvement with the band, but I also like some of his songs, so whatever.
Again, I think that's my takeaway from this documentary is that there are two Beach Boys. Yeah. And when Mike Love says that he is responsible for the Beach Boys as a group, in his mind, he's thinking about the touring.
See, and I don't even necessarily see it that way. I agree with the whole there's multiple Beach Boys, but there's the Beach Boys as they actually were as an artistic entity, and there's the Beach Boys in the place of the imaginary. They molded the California dream with these songs about surfing, and they've retained and you know, Endless Summer, as Mike says, I think it was Mike, re-energized our career and all of that. But that is a sanitized, Disney-fied, we could say, version of this band. The real Beach Boys, I don't think it's like a breakdown between studio and live. I think the two different Beach Boys is the reality and just the public perception. And the public perception is they made a bunch of songs about surfing. They got a little creative. Brian flexed his artistic muscle. It produced a great album. Then they struggled to find their way, and they eventually found their way by just going back to the well of the old hits and just becoming this touring behemoth that now plays every, you know, state fair possible. The reality
On the 4th
of this
of July.
The reality of this band is they are an artistically and personally complex, fascinating, fucked up band with multiple peaks and multiple valleys. And we got none of that, really. We got the Disney-fied, here's the presentation of the band, the way that Mike wants it to be known. And that's what it is. The fact that the only contemporary footage of Beach Boys is a story that is told by Mike, by Al, and by Bruce is very, very telling. We get that. We get archival footage of Brian, Carl, and Dennis. Brian is incapable of telling the real story at this point. So we end up with what we ended up with, and, well, we are running really short on time now. We got to rate this thing.
Shocked that Kokomo was not involved.
I was actually legitimately, shocked would be the word. That they didn't spend a lot of time.
Quick notes.
All right, quick notes here. Yeah.
The 4 freshmen are old as fuck.
Yeah.
Those pictures, they're called the 4 freshmen. They look like they were in their 40s. I like the Carl anecdote where he says, you know, I wanted to go out and play, and Brian was like, Mom, make Carl sing. Apparently, according to Al, this might be another case of Al talking bullshit, but the whole story about them renting the instruments and forming the band initially was different.
Yeah, that was a very different story.
Yeah, he says the Wilson parents gave $200 for food. They blew through that, and then Al went to his mom, and his mom gave them the $300 for their rental. And the other story is that they just used the food money from Brian's parents for the rentals. So who knows? Maybe he's trying to take credit for that too. The moment when Brian says, "Oh, we got a hit record," I said, "I quit college," and my brothers were like, "We quit high school." And then the last thing is conveniently no mention of Marilyn's age when any of that went down.
Glenn, any more last minute notes?
No, I mean, just that conveniently, the closing scene, they all get back together on the beach.
Oh, yeah.
Conveniently, there's no audio.
I was going to
what are they talking
make
about?
a comment that was further evidence that Brian might not be ambulatory.
Yeah.
Like, he's in a wheelchair in some of the photos.
He's already
seated. So
Right,
Anyway.
Yeah.
It was cool that they went back to Paradise Cove, but it was just kind of a...
It was a little forced and heavy-handed. The last thing I have is Darlin slaps live, even in 1980.
Yeah.
All right, we got to rate this thing like really fucking quick.
Wilson Phillips.
Part of me wants to give it a Wilson Phillips, but part of me wants to give it a Bruce Johnston just because it's well done.
It is well done.
And it's a good entry point that gives you a little quick overview.
Yeah.
It's not offensive.
I'll give it a Wilson Phillips because it just didn't need to exist. I mean, a better one could have existed instead.
No, it needed to exist. That's the thing.
Maybe.
Okay. Bruce Johnston.
On Letterboxd, I think I gave it a very, very low Bruce Johnston, but I could see giving it a David Marks. A John Stewart, but either way.
Let's give it a John Stewart.
Okay, why
John
not?
Stewart.
All right, we're going to come back one last break, and we'll come back to wrap it all up. All right, we are back to close it all out. Very, very quickly, because we are approaching our hour mark.
See, the thing about
No,
documentaries...
shut up.
Okay.
All right. So yeah, that's really kind of it.
Solid.
We'll catch you
Solid.
next time when we're
Solid
talking about
episode.
something that'll be. Oh God.
Oh, dear.
All right. Well, hey, for Talking Down the Highway, I'm Matt.
I'm Glenn.
I'm Tim. Bye.